Can you believe she's doing nothing even though she's in her last month of pregnancy? What kind of parenting did you do? When I opened the front door, there were my daughter, Jessica, and her husband, Thomas. Thomas scowled at me, complaining about dust accumulating under the table and a dirty bathroom floor. He seemed to think my daughter's inability to clean meant I had failed as a parent. It's tough for her to bend down with that belly. If he's that concerned, why doesn't he clean it himself? Before I could say anything, Thomas reached for the door. I can't be bothered with someone who can't even keep house. I'm leaving her. I'm Rebecca, and I turned 54 this year. I work as an employee for a major corporation. After losing my husband early, it's been just me and my only daughter, Jessica. Raising Jessica alone wasn't easy, but her smiles always made the fatigue disappear. Jessica grew into a kind and thoughtful young woman, blessed with good friends. However, she was clueless in romantic relationships and struggled to find a boyfriend. I was hoping she'd meet someone in high school, but she didn't even have a boyfriend in college. After graduating, she's been working as an office employee for a food manufacturer. Not a single rumor about her dating life. When I'm gone, Jessica would be all alone. I started to worry, considering introducing her to someone, when she shyly informed me she's dating a man she met through a friend. Their relationship progressed smoothly, and about 2 years in, they announced their engagement. I felt relieved. It's bittersweet to see your only child move out, but the reassurance of her having a family outweighed that. The couple lives about an hour's drive from my house. Thomas is 4 years older than Jessica and a very ambitious man. Thomas often works late or goes out for drinks, citing his career ambitions, leaving all household chores to Jessica. I thought they should share responsibilities, but I refrained from interfering in their lives. Then, about 6 months after their wedding, Jessica invited me to lunch to announce she's expecting. Jessica, who didn't have siblings, always liked children. She used to tell me she wished for a little sister or brother, something I couldn't provide as I had no plans to remarry. Jessica, who had always wanted kids even after getting married, was lovingly speaking to her still flat belly, rubbing it gently, as if she couldn't wait to meet her unborn child. Seeing her like this filled me with joy. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to call me. I parted ways with Jessica after saying that. Since Jessica continued working during her pregnancy, I made it a point to check in on her regularly to see how she was doing. Around the time she entered her second trimester, I was assigned a big project at work that would result in frequent travel. When I told Jessica about this, she was thrilled for me and told me to focus on my work, assuring me she would be fine. I asked Thomas multiple times to look out for Jessica while I dove into my work. It should be close to Jessica's final month of pregnancy by now. As the project was winding down and work was settling, I called to discuss plans for after the baby arrives. To my surprise, it was Thomas who answered the phone. Hey, Rebecca. Good timing. Jessica's pretty useless and in the way, so I'm gonna bring her over to your place. What? What do you mean? Before I could get an answer, he hung up. An hour later, my doorbell rang. Opening the door, I found a disheveled Jessica standing there next to Thomas. Jessica! I was shocked at how much my daughter had changed. She didn't even have the strength to smile. Dark circles under her eyes, her hair, nails, and skin all dry. She looked nothing like a woman in her 20s. Her fingers were cracked and bleeding. Her expression was dark, her gaze fixed on a single point. How could she deteriorate so much in just a few months? I let them in and had them sit on the couch. Since Jessica was in no state to speak, I demanded an explanation from Thomas. Thomas, why is Jessica like this? And then Thomas, without a hint of embarrassment, looked surprised and said, Wait, are you blaming me? She's the one who slowed down because of her big belly. You know, housework is a woman's job, and she even lied about feeling sick to get out of it. I was incredulous. You were making a morning sick Jessica do all the chores? Morning sickness isn't a disease, you know. She even asked me to help with the chores while I've been working all day. Anyhow, she's in the way and not doing her chores, so please take care of her until she gives birth. That's when I realized this man had no understanding of pregnancy or fatherhood. I couldn't leave my precious daughter in his care. Fine, I'll take her in. I can't trust you to care for her. Yes, when I told Thomas, he retorted, Look, if your daughter is such a mess, it's because you failed to raise her properly. With no father around, she doesn't even know how to treat her husband. I'm the one suffering here. Once the baby's born, come pick it up. Meanwhile, please re-educate your daughter, Rebecca. Before Thomas left, he stated he wanted me to fix my daughter's upbringing by the time the baby comes. Then, he just left Jessica and walked away. The nerve of that man. I deeply regret letting Jessica marry him. Jessica sits there, looking down like a doll. First, I need to make her feel secure. So I went to the fridge, poured milk into Jessica's favorite cup with a bit of sugar, and warmed it up in the microwave. Be careful, it's hot, I told her as I handed it over. Upon sipping the warm milk, Jessica broke into sobs, tears flowing freely. I sat next to her, rubbed her back, and listened to her story. Thomas was ambitious and continued to attend work parties even after Jessica became pregnant, leaving her alone. Whenever she needed something, he wouldn't lift a finger to help. He even demanded she do housework when she was feeling ill from the pregnancy. Hey, get up! You've been lounging around. You haven't done the dishes or laundry. Sometimes he would even bring home colleagues after a night of drinking and force her to cook and clean for them. I clenched my fists, furious at how my pregnant daughter was being treated like a servant. Jessica told me she didn't want to jeopardize my career, so she endured it. She even asked doctors to explain to Thomas about the physical changes in pregnancy, but it was all in vain. Her in-laws lived far away, only accessible by flight, so she couldn't rely on them either. She had always put others before herself. I hugged her and said, From now on, it's okay to prioritize yourself, Jessica. If you're struggling, don't hesitate to ask for help. I'm sorry for not realizing sooner. With that, I gently stroked her head. Mom, thank you. And then she broke into childlike sobs. A few days after Jessica came to stay, her emotional state became increasingly unstable as her due date approached. When I returned from work, the house was clean. Even when I told her to rest, Jessica would continue doing chores. She'd even attempt to move heavy mattresses or change burnt-out light bulbs. At times, she tried to pack her bags and go home, fearing her husband's wrath. I thought she might need counseling, so I went to our neighbor, who used to be a therapist, to ask for a recommended clinic. Lisa, hello, do you have a moment? I need to talk about my daughter. Welcoming me into her home, Lisa listened to my story. I shared Jessica's situation with Lisa and her husband Kevin and received recommendations for a good clinic. Jessica had been feeling off too, so she started visiting the hospital. Lisa and her husband were concerned about Jessica, so when I was at work, Lisa would stop by to check on her. Thankfully, Jessica started to recover and smiled more like she used to. When the due date came, I took Jessica to the hospital. As her contractions began, I rubbed her back and wiped her sweat, encouraging her all the way. As the contractions grew closer, I watched Jessica walk into the delivery room. I sat in a chair, restless and eager until I heard the baby's cries. A nurse informed me that both mother and child were healthy, a relief to hear. When I went to see them, Jessica was holding our sleeping baby in her arms. I was angry at Thomas, but I still let him know that a healthy baby girl had been born. Then immediately entering the hospital room and seeing his newborn, Thomas blurted out, Yuck! Babies look like monkeys. Not cute at all. Jessica, you're not even wearing makeup and just lying in bed. You're so lazy. Put some effort into how you look. You're a woman. Just as I was about to retort, the nurses and doctors who heard him lost their temper. They surrounded Thomas, shouting, "Are you even a husband? Your wife just gave birth risking her life and she's exhausted. Can't you say something nice?" But Thomas, visibly irritated, shot back, "Shut up. My mom was working even right after giving birth. This is clearly laziness." I've never heard of a woman working immediately after childbirth, and there's no way he could remember that. Something must have twisted his memory. It makes sense he wouldn't know, given he's never shown interest in pregnancy or childbirth. Thomas stormed out and didn't even show up on Jessica's discharge day. No signs of him coming to pick her up. Concerned about sending Jessica back to him, I told her she could stay with me, but Jessica wanted to go home, saying it was unfair to the child to grow up without a father. Reluctantly, I called Thomas to see if he would pick her up. He replied, "I'm busy with work, so please take care of things there. I don't want to lose sleep because of a crying baby." He hung up right after that. I brought Jessica home, suggesting she stay until she got used to parenting. Thomas hadn't bought any baby essentials, so we went shopping to set up a nurturing environment. Thomas hadn't even thought about a name because he was so focused on his work, so Jessica and I chose one. We named the baby Sarah. Our neighbors Lisa and her husband knew the situation and helped with childcare, so Sarah grew up well. About 3 months after Sarah's birth, Thomas showed up without any notice to pick up Jessica and Sarah. "Hey, I'm here to pick you up. Hurry up, you're always so slow," Thomas yelled from the front door. By the time Jessica's emotional instability after a childbirth had temporarily settled, and she fully understood how terrible Thomas was, Jessica had made up her mind to divorce and had no intention of going back to him. From behind the door, she said, "I won't be controlled by you anymore, and I'm not coming back home. I'll mail you the divorce papers, so sign them." Thomas yelled back, "Are you kidding me? In today's world, a man with a wife and kids is more likely to succeed. What's the point of being married to you if we divorce? I'm never getting divorced." My daughter was furious, thinking that her husband had married and had a child just for the sake of a career advancement. But before I could yell back, the door next door opened. Hearing Thomas's loud voice, our neighbors Lisa and her husband Kevin stepped out of their home. Thomas, who glanced at Lisa, paled instantly when her husband Kevin appeared. "Boss, what are you doing here?" Stunned, Thomas watched Lisa and Kevin approach. It turns out Kevin was Thomas's supervisor. Kevin, also surprised, said, "So you're Jessica's husband. To think a terrible man like you, who neglected his child for 3 months, turns out to be you. You lack empathy, and I can't trust my team to someone like you. I'll let the CEO know as well, but consider your promotion canceled," Kevin sternly whispered to Thomas. "Please, Kevin, reconsider." Clinging to Kevin in tears, Thomas said, "You have nothing more to say to me. You don't even want to listen. You only ever cared about your work." Kevin cuts him off, not allowing any further comments. "What was all my hard work for?" Thomas drops to his knees, deflated. Kevin is known in the neighborhood and at work as a family man, and he couldn't tolerate Thomas treating his family like tools. Apparently, Thomas had been putting on a good face at work for the sake of promotion. Thomas went home quietly that day, but once at the office, he pestered colleagues and subordinates, saying, "Hey, you a dinner at my place, right? Could you put in a good word for me with the boss for a promotion?" When no one complied, he went straight to the CEO. "Sir, I've worked hard for this company every day. My sales numbers are consistently high. Please approve my promotion." "I've heard from your boss," said the CEO. "Your performance numbers might look good, but you've been using aggressive tactics to win contracts. Just raising your own numbers isn't enough. A deal that tarnishes the company's image is negative, even if it's successful. If you can't consider that, you can't move up. I have no more expectations for you." Thomas leaves the CEO's office, his face pale with dejection. The CEO of Thomas's company is occasionally on TV and is well known as a man of integrity. He made his judgment based on more than just the boss's reports. Thomas probably got the message. After that, Thomas lost his motivation for work. His constant mistakes became a burden, and he was transferred to a regional department with hardly any work. At least, he wasn't fired. After his transfer was settled, Thomas repeatedly came to our house saying, "Jessica, it was my fault. I want another chance. I want to see Sarah. I'm her father, right?" Both Jessica and I ignored Thomas, but when he became too persistent, Kevin warned him that he would report him to the CEO, which would get him fired. After that, we didn't see him anymore. It must have been shallow affection after all. When Kevin found out that Jessica was having trouble getting her divorce accepted, he referred her to a top-notch attorney. The divorce was finalized smoothly, and she was even able to claim compensation for emotional distress. Thomas got transferred and seemed to be living a quiet, lonely life in a rural area. I heard this from Kevin. He said the last time Thomas came into the office, he looked unrecognizable. His shirt and suit were wrinkled. He'd grown a beard, and he had lost a lot of weight. In the small town Thomas moved to, you can't easily visit a dry cleaner or a convenience store without a car. Whether he's trying to save on gas or just can't be bothered, if he doesn't use these services, he'll have to fend for himself. Thomas never lifted a finger to help with housework, always saying it was a woman's work. So he probably doesn't know how to do anything for himself. He should regret treating Jessica like a servant when he's there all alone. Maybe Thomas thinks he has lost everything since the divorce and losing custody. He even started to forget the child support payments he promised to make to Sarah. If Jessica calls to remind him, he apparently tells her how hard his life is, almost in tears. I advised Jessica to inform her lawyer, and as soon as she requested the child support through legal channels, it got paid. So far, we've heard nothing from Thomas about wanting to see Sarah. If Sarah wants to, we'll reach out, but Jessica and I agreed that we would pour lots of love into raising her into a fine adult, even without a father around.